let me know if you guys can't hear me online. So yeah, I did a walk. I went a little bit of a ways. So I guess it's kind of hard to summarize a whole experience of 6 months, which is how long I was out there, but this is my best attempt. I had a whole Excel spreadsheet and you guys submitted like 40 different questions. So it's kind of all over the place with answering stuff. Also framing what my experience was, like what the heck I was doing out there anyway. And then kind of some lessons and takeaways from that. So we'll jump in. Or we won't. Can you, if you click on it?
Closer.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I think it just needed to be tapped. All right, so what is the Appalachian Trail? Oh, hi, hello, my name is Jordan. I was an intern here previously, and then I was here for like 7 months, and then left to go hike the AT, and I am back. I'm in product development on the lower extremity team, specifically working with the Kino system. Thank you. So what is the AT? The AT is the longest hiking only path in the world. It is 2,194.3 miles. That mileage actually changes slightly every year due to reroutes for conservation purposes and different things. But the year that I hiked it last year was 2,194.3 miles. Crosses through 14 states from Maine all the way down to Georgia. Crosses through 2 national parks, so the Smoky Mountains and Shenandoah National Park, which we only have 1 room. We only have Shenandoah's as a conference room, but I'm very prepared to provide pictures if we do that in those rooms, as well as 8 national forests that crosses through. And overall, total elevation gain is about 464,000 feet. To put that in perspective, that is equivalent of hiking Mount Everest from sea level 16 times. So it goes up and down a lot. This is an elevation profile. So the left is the southern half, the right is the northern half. I think this is a huge misconception because people will often think, oh, like the AT, like the northern half is really cold. That's probably like crazy high. And it's like actually not true. The southern half overall is at a higher elevation, so you can get really, really cold temperatures there. And a lot of people who start, typically traditionally done, is a northbound or NOBO through hike. So starting in Georgia and hiking north to Maine. People who start even February, like really end for starting, typically it's like March and April. But those people will be hitting snow in the Smokies. It's not uncommon. Like I remember seeing notifications last year, it was like 5-foot snow drifts in the Smokies. So it's not uncommon. But then the northern half is up, down, up, down. So you end up hitting high elevations. But fun fact, I think I heard all the 10 highest peaks on the entire trail are all in like North Carolina to Virginia range, besides Mount Washington, up in the White Mountains. But little perspective. So what is through hiking and how does it work? By definition of like the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, through hiking is hiking the entire trail within 1 year, so 365 days. If you do it all, then you're a through hiker, and you get like a little 2,000-miler certificate thing and everything, a little patch. So at the core, you're living out of a backpack. So this is me descending Mount Washington, overlooking the presidential range. Love this picture. This is a fantastic day. But that on me is everything that I carried for 6 months. That's all I needed. That was my home. It changed every single day. Nothing was ever consistent. But at the core of it, you're living out of your backpack. You're camping at shelters or designated campsites and stealth sites along the way. So shelters on the left, like a 3-walled wooden structure, sometimes stone, sometimes they're really fancy. You get 2 levels, sometimes a fire place can get really fancy. But basically, you can set up your sleeping pad, sleep system in there. If you don't want to set up your tent, usually around that area, there's also tent sites where you can set up your tent. And the nice thing about shelters is they usually provide a privy, which, surprise, there's no running water out in the wilderness. So if you need to go to the bathroom, you're either digging a hole to take a poop, or there's a privy. It's basically an outhouse. So those are always like a plus. You could be around there. You don't have to. And then there's usually a water source nearby, which, and this is another, so like stealth sites, the designated campsites will be indicated on the map of, hey, there's maybe 4 or 5 little tent spots around here. And then stealth sites could really just be you're walking along the trail and it's like, hey, that spot is flat. I can fit a tent there. And you kind of cater it around where you can get water, because you can't just go to your faucet and get water whenever you want. So a lot of your planning is based on whereas my water for the day, I think I had a 13-mile stretch that had no water when I was in Virginia. So that was like, I had to either do 26 miles in one day to get to a water source, or stop short, be like, do a water carry for like the first 3 miles into it, and then get out the last 10 miles the next day. But so there's a balance there, but a lot of it is around water, and which I use a filter. I can show you a filter. I never, ever, ever did like not filter my water. Some people take the risk, some people pay the price. I saw that happen. You do not want to be throwing up and, you know, the other end on trail. But so I would fill up my water bladder from a stream, a spring, sometimes a pond. Pond is really not ideal. You want it to be running water, but you get what you get. And then this is a water filter, threads onto here, and then I squeeze it through into my water bottle, and that's clean drinking water. And then access to towns for resupply, shower, and laundry. So I think there's also a big conception that like, oh my God, you're in the woods for 6 months, like you never saw people or anything. That's not true. I had to get food from somewhere. I think on average, the trail crosses a road every 4 miles on average. Granted, some of those are like gravel roads and like very back road and like little trailheads. But you can get on these roads, get into town. There are hostels along the trail as well. So they are very, very catered to hikers and the stinky and net mess that comes with them. And you can get showered, do your laundry. They'll often provide like loaner clothes too, because you only have one pair of clothes. And what do you wear when you need to wash those clothes? So sometimes they will have like a pair of sweatpants, shorts, t-shirts, and we call them loaner clothes. And ultimately you keep walking. So you know, got a lot of miles to do, but there's also a phrase, it's smiles, not miles. So yes, you do have to walk the miles to put in the trail or to finish the trail, but ultimately it's about the experience along the way. So this, I don't know who put this question on the spreadsheet, but I love the phrasing of it. I guess my question is why? That's a great question. So my why, this is my parents and our dog Kilo. They actually got to join me on trail for the first week, and then second week later on. So a little background, my mom she really wants to section hike the entire trail. And she had mentioned back in 2020, she's like, yeah, people hike it all the way through at one time. And I was like, that's crazy. Yep. So I started looking into it and I was like, well, call me crazy because I fell in love with the idea. There are kind of big 3 things that spoke to me about it. One was the challenge. I'm absolutely always drawn to a challenge and learning new things. I had never been backpacking at this point ever. My family is very active and like outdoorsy growing up. So like we go hiking and camping all the time, but I never put it together in backpacking. But the physical challenge of it, one, but then also the mental challenge. Like, yes, it is very physically demanding. You saw how much elevation gain there is, but it is the mental grit of the day in and day out of the same thing over and over again, waking up, putting on your cold, wet, sweaty clothes, like, and you're just walking. So it's a lot of, there's the physical challenge, but the bigger part is honestly the mental challenge of it. And then being outdoors, I absolutely love being outside. Having that challenge in nature, I think was a very unique aspect. And then self-growth, I wasn't necessarily going out there to like find myself type thing, but I do think there's a huge element of self-growth and growth and discovering like what you're capable of. Having so much solitude is another thing, like you're hiking and you're in your thoughts. Where does your mind go without distractions of the day-to-day life? And then doing it solo, so independently. That was a big part for me because I did not want to be catered to anyone else's pace, anyone else's timelines, anything like that. And it was just trusting myself and my abilities, what I was able to do in the way that I was doing it. So that was a big factor too. So I had mentioned traditionally people hike northbound, Georgia to Maine. I did an alternative route. They call it a flip-flop. So I started Harpers Ferry, West Virginia on May 2nd. That was about the halfway point. My trail name was Slice, by the way. People often get a trail name. It's usually from something stupid that you did or something that's like characteristically you, a piece of gear that you carry or something. I sliced my thumb open with my knife, so I got Slice. That became very versatile though. It's like slice of pizza, slice of life, slice of happiness. So that was kind of a fun one. But so started Harpers Ferry, and then I hiked northbound to Mount Katahdin in Maine. Summited August 29th. Spent 5 days. My mom, my grandpa actually drove all the way up to Maine, picked me up, and drove me back to Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. And driving back, we actually rerouted some of my path. My grandpa was obsessed with tracking me. This was like concerningly obsessed, but it gave him something to do, so I guess that's good. But so we actually walked through or drove through different places that we had been. So like one of the places was Mount Washington. There's an auto road that drives all the way up to the top in the White Mountains. So we got to go up there, and like my grandpa was on Mount Washington with me. So that was really cool to like relive that with them. So we spent 5 days. September 4th, started back at Harpers Ferry, and then hiked south to finish in Georgia on Springer Mountain. And my big motivation for doing this was to avoid the crowd of people. Surprisingly, there are a lot of people that want to go walk in the woods for 6 months. Like I think at least 2 years ago, it was like 50 to 60 people on average starting a day in March and April in Georgia. And these like shelters that I was showing you before and the campsites, they're very limited. There would be like max 20 campsites. So you've got people cramming in. And then also in like the trail communities, you have these stinky through hikers raiding the laundromats and the gas stations and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to do it. The Trail Conservancy is actually trying to encourage people to do these like alternative routes. It's also better on the trail. Like you're constantly wearing down on the trail, trekking pole marks, like erosion, all that kind of stuff. So it's easier on the trail for people to disperse. Also, I love people, but I also love my personal space. So it was a very nice balance to do the flip-flop and kind of have a nice balance there. So I say I hiked solo, but I was never like alone. I mean, yeah, I was alone while I was hiking, but there is so much community on the trail. People that I met hiking, people in communities and towns. People that I met for like 2 days. We used instant connection. You're kind of a family out there, and like we're still checking on each other, and we knew each other for 1 day max. So in the top left was, we call it a trail family, a tramily. People that you kind of end up are about a similar pace. You like click well together. So the top left was my tramily for most of my northbound hike, and then in this bottom right was most of my tramily for the last 2 weeks of my southbound hike. When I flipped south, I stayed solo, like really not hiking with people, just like people I'd meet here and there for most of it. And then the last 2 weeks finished out with my little tramily here. So food was a big question that a lot of you guys had. And this was a big thing that was different for me than it was for most people. Usually when people get into towns, they just resupply at the grocery stores or whatever. But some places there's only a gas station. Like that's all that the town has. And I did not want to be requiring a resupply for 3 days of food off of honey buns and Snickers bars, which is kind of fantastic at some point, but has its limitations. So I actually went through dehydrating lots of food, which if you guys knew me last year, saw me dehydrating like crazy. Bree knows this was set up and going constantly as I was preparing. But basically I was preparing food ahead of time, at least for like my dinners, dehydrating meals. This was stuff in the dehydrator. This is then assembling meals. So I basically did mostly like veggies and some proteins, grains and stuff like that. Assembled meals and vacuum sealed them, and then assembled boxes that my parents so graciously sent to me to different post offices along the trail. So I would pack about 5 to 6 days worth of food, approximately 10 pounds. And then I could just get into town, pick that up, and then I've got all my food for the week. And then on the trail, when I pick up my box, I open it up, stuff it all into my bear can, which was kind of a bit of strategy in itself. And then on trail to actually heat it up, this is my little pocket rocket. So it's a little fuel canister. You plug it, or you screw in the pocket rocket, which is your stove, light it up, and you can cook. So I would like bring everything to a boil for like a minute, turn it off, let it soak some more. Except for the one time that I ran out of fuel and I did have to cook on the fire. So it gave my pot a lot of character, nice and charred now. But so it worked out really well for me. I enjoyed having way more control of my nutrition. I was also eating pretty good. Everyone else was eating questionable sometimes, and I had some pretty good meals. So some of the favorite foods you guys were asking, my trail meal, of the things that I made, probably this like shrimp ramenera, I call it. So it was a ramen packet, but I added dehydrated shrimp, mushrooms, peppers, onions, and homemade tomato sauce. And that was very tasty. Off-trail meal, Mountain Harbor B&B in Roan Mountain, Tennessee, is voted for 13 years in a row the best breakfast on trail, and it did not disappoint. It was fantastic. This was my first plate of food. I ate this entire thing again, and then packed out some like homemade scones and stuff too. That's another thing. Hiker hunger is very real. You can consume so much food. Trail snack, these little honey stinger waffles were so, so good. And that was another thing I noticed is like on trail, I think you're burning so many calories and you're so active, you really crave the things that your body needs. And so when I'd eat that thing, like the carbs, the sugar, it tasted so, so good. I remember when I got home, I ate one of these at one point and I was like, just not the same flavor anymore, but just a little different. And then ice cream, I love this question because I got ice cream in almost every town I went in. Top was Belleville Farms Creamery in Warwick, New York. So, so good. I even went back when we were going back through with my grandpa and my mom, and I had told them, this is the best ice cream. They're like, are you sure you're not just saying that because, you know, you were hungry? And they confirmed it was very good ice cream. And the other one, some friends here gave me Simon Says Dip This. That's from here in Durham. They had some freeze-dried ice cream, so I got to enjoy this on the trail. So it was a little memory of you guys, because yes, I did miss you all. So, did you encounter any animals? This was the #1 question that everyone was getting, or upvoting on the little thing. So the answer is yes, lots and lots of animals. I can like touch on a couple of these. The biggest question is always, did you see bears? Yes, I did see bears. So in the top left, those are 2 like screenshots from videos that I had because I wasn't kind of close, but not super close. Total of 3 bears that I saw in the northeast in like Connecticut, Massachusetts area. And then when I was hiking southbound, I was in camp with these 2 guys. We were making dinner, and there was a mom and her 3 cubs that strolled through our campsite. So that was a little alarming. Honestly, it was less scary and more just immediately like, okay, goodbye, bear. Come on, leave, bye. And it was kind of jump into action of, we do not want this bear here. So that was exciting. There's this little pony here in the bottom left area. That is the wild ponies in the Grayson Highlands. They're so fluffy and cute. That was an all-time high. I love that area as well. The bottom left is me crossing a beaver bog, which I did not actually get to see a beaver, but that was a little weird because this is also extra flooded at this time, but you're just walking through like shin deep water. I don't know if there's going to be a beaver here or not. So that was a little interesting. In the center, this is part of the reason that I did not like sleeping in the shelters, and I would just sleep in my tent at the shelter. It's because mice and rats are very common at the shelters. There's also a bat at one point. Right below this yes sign is a fish. So I showed you this water bladder. I actually caught a fish when I was going to filter my water. I did not realize it until after I'd filtered all my water. I was going to dump the rest of the water out, and I was like, I have a fish. So that was very exciting. And then everyone always asks about the bears. Are you scared of bears? Yada, yada. No, I was scared of ticks in the middle. That was like a huge concern on trail. They were all over the place in Connecticut. I had sprayed all of my clothes, treated like industrially with permethrin, which is really good to help counter that. And so I didn't have too bad of a problem. I found a couple on me at times, was able to get them off, but I know other people who are constantly picking them off. So every day doing tick checks, especially in the summer, is a very, very big thing. The most unexpected one in the bottom, a peacock. I like turned to the corner and there was a peacock laying in the middle of the trail. That was in Pennsylvania. I don't know if it was somebody's peacock or what, but that was fun. Snakes, that was another big one. Saw tons and tons of snakes. Never saw a copperhead, thankfully, although there was a big concern of that all the time in Pennsylvania. Cows, you walk through lots of cow pastures, which is keep your eyes peeled because they poop everywhere. And then this bottom right, this is Ryder. He was part of our family as well. That was Ryan's dog. And unfortunately, he got a little too friendly with the porcupine and had about like 35 quills in his nose. And so we had to trail run 3 miles to get to a road crossing to call a shuttle to get to an emergency vet to get him healed. So that was exciting. I did not actually see the porcupine. Later saw another porcupine, but that's my best picture for you. So yes, I saw animals, lots of animals. So I had said before, one of my motivations was the challenge. I had plenty of challenges. That was very, very apparent. I'll talk about some of them in detail, but one thing that I've come to recently realize with the pollen coming up right now this spring, seeing pollen on my car, it reflected me back to trail. The first 2 weeks were absolutely miserable because here, you get into your house, I can wash my face off. There's no pollen in here. It's clean. You don't have that luxury outside. You're sleeping outside and breathing it in constantly. So I couldn't breathe for like 2 weeks. And I was a snotty mess. It was horrible. So that was just one of those little challenges there. Dealing with the weather specifically, raining. Somebody asked what happens when it rains. You're going to get wet. it's just inevitable, and it's likely a combination of sweat and rain. So I had a poncho, but you accept that everything is wet. I liked the poncho as opposed to like a rain jacket because I could let it breathe a little bit more to kind of like bring the front up and have a little more air ventilation than a rain jacket. And then the top right is flooding. This was supposed to be a little stream. It was not a stream. This was thigh-high water. So that's always a concern. I know people who had come about an hour after this and they said it was chest-high water. I would not have crossed at that point. That's a very big, even this was like questionable at first. So that's just part of the concerns. And then when you finally get sunlight again, you can dry everything out. The sun is a very good dryer. And then when it's hot, find water and chug electrolytes because you're sweating so much. It's very easy to get dehydrated and get exhausted, and heat exhaustion is definitely a concern. This picture on the right is probably borderline heat exhaustion. This was on top of Smarts Mountain in New Hampshire. It was dead, but the view was really nice. And then the cold, the complete opposite. Hike faster or go to bed. So when you're hiking at the start of the day when it's so cold, it's miserable, but you just have to start moving, and eventually you get warmer, On the left, this was when we had our big cold snap in the beginning of or middle of October in Tennessee. It was a high of like 22 degrees. It was a wind chill of 14, and it was snowing, and I was like, oh, what am I doing here? And then this is me curled up because I didn't handle the cold well. And then I was going to say the other thing would be if you're in bed or in camp, sometimes you're making dinner, you kind of just accept that you're cold. Like you put all your layers of clothes on, but you can't kick up the AC or the heat anymore. So you can kind of just get in bed and curl up, but there are limitations there. So managing pain and injury, warning that there's some foot pictures and blood pictures and toe pictures here. So you've been warned. So on the left is this chafing that I had from my shorts. It felt like my legs were on fire for every step of 13 miles. And I don't know if it was just sweat, rain. It was very like rainy, muggy, humid. Also, the shorts that I had a lot of like seam in them, and they probably weren't the best material. So after this happened, I got into town and was able to get to an outfit and was like, they had just closed, and they're like, sorry, you're gonna have to come back tomorrow. And I like showed her my leg, and she was like, come inside. So she like helped me get new shorts, which definitely helped. They dried a lot faster. Bites, cuts, all that kind of stuff. On the top right, my toenail ended up splitting in half. I don't know like how that happened, but that ended up being really painful. Blisters, thankfully, didn't have too big of a problem. You can kind of see on my pinky toe, like the first week, both my pinky toes kind of formed blisters, but then it just like toughened up and it was fine the rest of the time. So thankfully did not have issue with that. Trench footy problems. So in the middle here, this was after my second 20-mile day, hiking through rain the entire day, / the trail itself was kind of a river, like many, many spots where it's like ankle deep water and you're just trudging through that. The last 3 miles, it felt like the bottom of my feet were peeling off. It was very, very painful. And then toes. My toes were numb. I didn't even know they were numb until I got back off of trail and put on a different pair of shoes for the first time. I was like, I can't feel my toes. So that was kind of weird. From like a joint and like soft tissue thing, I had Achilles. My Achilles flared up a couple times. Hip pain came in. Knees were probably the worst. That top picture was me when I had a complete breakdown. I had excruciating pain in my knee, and it was like 3 days on one knee, and it kind of went away. I was like, all right, we're good. And then I switched to the other knee, the exact same pain, and I was just losing it. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing differently. There's excruciating pain running like up and down my leg. Felt like something was about to pop out of my knee. That kind of stuff. It's just managing it. Icing it, my joints and everything in streams because you don't have ice packs, but streams are usually cold. So icing, resting when possible. Like with my Achilles, just taking it really slow. I remember crawling to get 10 miles into town, but just going at a really slow pace, not to overexert. And then a bone bruise. Also, I had like a bone bruise in my foot for the last 400 miles. You kind of just, part of it is just working through it. The chafing, Vaseline was a big one for healing it and then also helping to prevent it. And then cry. Sometimes you just gotta cry. That does help sometimes. So all of this leads to what we call the hiker hobble. Basically, anytime you stand up after 30 minutes or so of sitting, you just kind of like have to get everything moving again. It's the worst in the mornings when you stand. I honestly would have to just stand there and let my feet kind of set into the ground and take a moment before I even tried taking a step. My grandpa loved capturing this video. But all of this is to say, there's a quote on trail that's embrace the suck. You're choosing to be out there. You know that there's a lot of joy with everything, but with that, there is a lot of suck. So that kind of leads me to, without the lows, there are no highs. This kind of gets into some of the questions you guys asked of favorites, which is horribly never ask somebody what their favorite section or favorite day is of trail. It's so hard to pick one, but I did my best. So favorite section overall, I think I'd have to say the 100-mile wilderness in Maine. It was fantastic. There was like no sign of civilization, roads, cars, power lines, anything. It's so peaceful. There's so many ponds you can swim in. There are sections of really hard technical terrain and trail, which I love. And then also like tons of flat. It was a beautiful set of scenery. So many mushrooms of all different kinds of colors. It was spectacular. That's also one thing is like, yes, the views and everything are really pretty, but I also loved all the small little creatures and mushrooms and all that kind of stuff. Best sunrise. This is Antlers campsite. This was also in the 100-mile wilderness. This was, I think part of why it was so amazing was that it was completely unexpected. It had been raining all night. We knew it was going to be cloudy the next day. And right at sunrise, there was just this gap in the clouds and it looked like everything was on fire. Like these pictures do not do it justice, but it was absolutely gorgeous. Best sunset, Rice Field Shelter. This was in Virginia. This is actually the day of my horrible knee pain of the crying picture prior. And I think part of why it was so good is because I actually would have missed this had I not had to have stopped because of my knee. I was trying to make it like 6 more miles to get into town and potentially get help because my knees were so bad and I could not make it. I was close to crawling. I stopped like 3 miles short and just had to stop here. I didn't have any water either, but I physically could not move anymore. But I saw an incredible sunrise or sunset. So there's pros and cons to everything. Best stars, I don't know how well you can tell, but this is the Sunset Mountain, also in 100-mile wilderness. You can see why maybe it's my favorite section of trail. But this was 2 days away from Mount Katahdin. And this picture was just taken with my phone. And you can already see there are so many stars, but I woke up in the middle of the night, walked out to the ledge. During the day, you can like see Katahdin in the distance, but just at night looking up and there were so many stars. And I think partially just because there's no civilization all around. So that was beautiful. A favorite day in particular, if I had to choose, I would say Franconia Ridge in the White Mountains in New Hampshire. This is some of the hardest section of trail. So I'll preface this by saying I looked at this at the end of the day and for most of the day, but I will still say that it was probably my favorite part of trail because when you get to the top, such spectacularly rewarding views. The whole thing, walking along this ridge for like several miles, you're getting these constant views the entire time. I was just very, very happy up there. Then also, I actually ran into a college friend on the hike up. He's from Massachusetts, and I was hiking up, and I glanced up and then did a double take, was like, no way. And I was like, Alex? And I was like, what are you doing here? So he had some fruit on him, gave us some trail magic, some fruit. We chatted, and I was like, all right, well, yeah, I'm going to continue on this journey of my lifetime, and I just trotted into you. And then the other thing is that this section of trail, I hiked with my parents as a day hike back in 2019. They swear that I was trying to kill them, and I wasn't, but it was hard, but it was very fun. But I ended up FaceTiming them and got to show them the view again. I was like, do you remember this? And of course, my family, they were also out in the outdoors in wilderness at the time. So that was just a very special day for me. And this was like 2 panoramas that I had taken. This is from coming down off of Lafayette. And then this is off on Garfield, which you can see actually is in the little middle point on that top panorama is that mountain, which I hiked over to and caught beginning of sunset. This is a horribly painful day as shown by that previous picture, but also loved it. So getting into some of the questions that you got asked, how long does a pair of shoes last? About 500 miles. I went through 4 pairs of shoes, which I do have here. There's trail runners. This is my last pair of shoes. These were on Springer Mountain for the finish. And then this is when I switched in Massachusetts, and I actually did not realize how much difference the fresh tread makes until I put on the new treads, and I felt like I could do anything. And then someone asked, what is the one piece of gear that I would recommend for a long distance backpacking trip? So besides your big 3, which is like your pack, your sleep system, and your shelter, those are kind of just essential, I decided to go with my Crocs, my camp shoes. It seems like kind of silly, but at the end of the day, like it feels so good to take your feet out and just let them splay out, let them breathe, air out, let your shoes air out. And then also for river fordings, if it's not like raining all day and you know you're going to be crossing a river, instead of trudging through in your hiking shoes, you can switch into your camp shoes, carry your hiking shoes, walk across switchback so you can keep your feet relatively dry. So that's a game changer. So gear that I didn't use, I carried paracord and like some other little things as like an emergency system. Thankfully, I never need. I know people like the people who did the water crossing at the chest height, they strung up paracord and use that across. So I always carried it just in case I would need it. I never needed it to hang a bear bag for like food or anything because I carried a bear canister to hold my food. And then I had an emergency blanket. After that cold snap, when it was like 12 degrees and I was freezing, I ended up getting an emergency blanket because I was terrified of, wow, if it's this cold in Virginia, what is it going to be like in the Smokies? Thankfully, it warmed up and I never had to use it. And then I'm really happy that I had my repair kit, which I never had to use the entire time until a rat popped a hole in my sleeping pad when I was in one of the shelters in the Shenandoahs. And so I had some tape and was able to repair it. Gear that I wish I had a reliable headlamp. Mine kind of gave out on me, and then Black Diamond sent me a new one, and that one also gave out on me. So when I was trying to go for my big 32.1 mile day, I was doing 2 hours in the dark starting at 5 a.m. and I was truly in the dark because my headlamp didn't work. So that was fun. And then maybe a different stove to boil water faster. I saw some other people had some really fast ones. And so I would just kind of be putzing along waiting for my thing to heat up. And then Max put this as a dumb question, but it actually wasn't a dumb question. How many apples on the Appalachian Trail? There was actually a lot. In Virginia, there was a lot of apple trees, and it was cool because I could just use my trekking pole, knock one down, and eat it. I think what's also cool to notice about this is none of the apples look like apples you see in the stores. Like they were all discolored or like weirdly shaped or something, but they were all delicious. And it makes me think about how much food we probably waste as a society just because something doesn't look pretty. So that was fun. I also had raspberries along the trail in Vermont and blueberries in Maine. So lots of fresh pickings. Scariest moments. So there were 3 different ones. One was a rattlesnake encounter. I almost stepped on a rattlesnake. We were crossing over like bog boards like this. I was with my friend. He was in front of me. As we were going, the snake rattled and like immediately swerved around. He jumped forward. I jumped backwards. And it was this pure panic moment of like, oh my God, how will we get through? And so it just kind of sat there, was like poking my trekking pole at the log, trying to like eventually get to move. And eventually he slithered away and passed by. But that moment was terrifying. I lost my phone at one point. I had checked it on the map to see how far am I away from this town, and then put it away in my fanny pack that I had, but actually instead of putting it in my fanny pack, put it between my fanny pack and me, so it fell down. So when I got to the destination, I went to go pull out my phone. It was like panic, so I dropped my stuff, ran back a mile, found it in the middle of the trail, thankfully, because I was terrified of losing all my pictures and videos and like not having my map. So there was like many layers to that. And then this is the only situation where I actually feared for a moment in terms of another person and actually grabbed the knife that I had as like a self-defense thing. And it was all a misunderstanding. But it started off with, I had gotten in camp. I was like in my tent, in my sleeping bag. I had just closed my eyes, ready to go to bed. And I hear a voice off down the hill to the left. I knew the shelter where people were at were to the right. And so I immediately am questioning, like, why is there someone appearing from where no one should be appearing from? I grabbed my knife, was holding on to it. He was like shining a light. As he was getting closer, I yelled like, hey, what are you doing? And he was like, oh, I'm so-and-so. I met you earlier. I'm looking for the privy. He had to go take a poop and he got lost and couldn't find the privy. And so I was in a moment of panic, but I guided him back and it was fine. So ultimately never had to use my knife, self-defense skills or anything. I did not carry a gun. A lot of people got that question. Do you have a question? Oh, it's small. I have it here. I actually have it here. It was a neck knife too. So some of the pictures you can probably see it. But this little guy. Oh, this is what I sliced my finger with. So my finger would say it's a knife. But yeah, so I did not carry a gun. People ask that a lot. I think in some sections you're actually not allowed to, but not worth the wait. Never really need to use it. And weirdest experience. I have a video in here because I just want you guys to experience this with me. This was in Virginia on a section of trail. And I'm going to stand over here because if I need to turn off the volume. Oh my gosh. I have a line of ghosts behind me. I'll
Would you
get.
like to pass? No? Okay. Oh my gosh. Please don't bite me in the butt. Hey. What? No. Stop. That was slightly nerve-wracking. I eventually threw the big chestnut thing I was holding far away, and I ran after it. But now I think they're coming again. They are! Oh my gosh! I'm being chased by goats. I'm just using my trekking poles and kind of swinging them behind me so they don't come right up on me. Because I'm genuinely afraid they're gonna try to bite my shorts or legs. This is an interesting experience. Oh, they stopped, okay. Oh my gosh, they're running again. I don't know what to do. Well, you guys never hear from me again. It's because the goats got me.
Yeah, so that was my weirdest experience on trail. Yeah, I felt like I can't accurately describe that. You just have to see that video. So anyway, so somebody asked what the craziest thing I did was. I would say it was probably cowboy camping. Cowboy camping just means not having your tent. You're just like set up with your sleep system. On this cliff in Connecticut. What's not shown is that there's a really solid ledge that I was kind of wedged into, so I was not concerned about rolling off, but my mom was not pleased when I sent her these pictures the next day. Notice the next day I did not send them the night of because I knew she would not sleep. Another crazy thing that I did, so you do sometimes you hitchhike to get into towns, which is a big no-no generally, but this specifically was probably the most questionable one. We were in the back of this box truck. But no one was stopping for us. We had waited for like 30 or 40 minutes, and this guy pulled over, and there's a group of these guys, and we're kind of like, okay. And Mike was friendly, so we survived. It was fun. So trail magic. Someone asked what the idea of trail magic is. Basically, it is anything unexpectedly good that happens to you on trail. That can be something as simple as like coming across a cooler that has fresh water in it on like a really dry day, hot day, something like that. Or like a ginger ale. Sodas taste so good on trail. Something about the bubbly sweet is just fantastic. Other times people will be set up with their cars and like have like snacks or things. Sometimes people were grilling out, had like a little grill there and would grill up burgers and hot dogs. And when you smell it coming down the mountain, it was, heaven. Trail angels, that's why you call them trail angels, the people who provide really good trail magic. But then one of them, probably my favorite ones, is just where people open up their homes to us. Like they'd be like, hey, do you guys need a place to crash tonight? Do you guys need shower, laundry? It was just like the good of humanity, like these people just trusting these strangers. It was amazing. And like we still keep in touch with these guys. Some of them texted me later on to be like, hey, how's the rest of the trail going? And we're always like, oh, I'll come back up and learn how to bake bread with you. To these people that are in Virginia, like not too far. And then this bottom picture I thought was cool because I had this happen to me twice on trail where I was chatting with them and they asked to pray for me. And I'm not a religious person, but that meant a lot just because that somebody was taking the time to do something that means a lot to them and like pray for me and like hearing the things that they said and looking out for me and like my continued health that like brought me to tears every time. And that really meant a lot. And to me, that's trail magic too. So anything big or small. And then some people relevant to here. Alex was, we were trying to schedule a time to call or something, and she was like, oh yeah, this weekend I'll be hiking in the Shenandoahs, but I'll be free at some point. And I was like, girl, I'm in the Shenandoahs right now. And so I finished the Shenandoahs and we met up and she brought me little trail magic and goodies. And then later, the rest of the crew came out, and this is funny because that's actually where I met Nick. I met Nick, my coworker. I met him on the trail as opposed to at work. So that was fun. And they hiked with me for the weekend. Most impressive hiker I met. This is Birthday Girl. She's a 76-year-old woman. I'm thinking the oldest female thru-hiker. I met her in Maine. She was doing like a little bit of a combination of flip-flopping, but she actually had to get off trail due to some health issues. She got back out there and is trying to finish. She's actually out there right now. This is her like 2 days ago in Massachusetts. Yes, Massachusetts. She has to finish actually at the White Mountains. She is hiking towards Mount Washington right now, which I don't know if anyone saw recently. It was like 100 degrees. So she is amazing and a true inspiration. She has to finish by, I believe it's March 30th is her birthday. That's why she got Birthday Girl as a trail name, because she started on her birthday, a 76-year-old. So she's absolutely fantastic. This kind of leads me into reflections, and part of that is, well, I guess I'll preface this by saying, part of me reflecting on trail, I think, has been, as I've gotten further away from trail, things have become more apparent of, different views on things, or my different shift in priorities, that kind of stuff, and things that I have learned. Because I feel like while I was hiking, I was like, some people said it would change you. I don't feel changed. Like, I don't know. It didn't really hit me until I was off trail, and I was like, I guess I kind of see how things have changed. But one of the things is that we limit ourselves a lot. That's one of the lessons I learned. And kind of like reflecting on Birthday Girl, she's 76 years old. She's not saying that she's too old for anything. And like when I'd be hiking, I would run into day hikers who were like, I'm 50, I'm too old for that. I can't. You're the only person saying that. There is nobody else putting that limitation on you. So I think we limit ourselves in a lot of different ways. Probably more than we should. And I think people should just take chances. Like Birthday Girl, she had never been backpacking also, and had decided in like November, I'm gonna hike the Appalachian Trail. So she started training for it. She hikes it at a pace that works for her, and she's out there crushing it. And so I think she has to average like 9 miles a day to finish now, and I believe she's gonna do it. The other is, another lesson was don't take mood for granted. I loved how active I was out there. Obviously it's a little excessive. It's probably be a balance, not that much, but I loved how I could move every single day. That was just part of the day. It made me feel good physically. Like if I was feeling all stiff and achy, start moving, you feel better. If you're sore, start moving, feel better. It was great mentally, emotionally, everything. Another lesson is that we're more similar than we are different. So I think of this in the context of like society. I think we're a very divided society, and we like to identify reasons that we're different and stuff, but on trail, it is such a simple lifestyle. Your priorities shift. All come down to the basic of food, shelter, and water. That's really the priorities there, and then that we're all very, very similar. And I think you can bond a lot with people, and I think that's part of why that's such a good community, is that you're basically down to the necessities, and there's such simple living, which I think is another point on here, but it's so simple, and you can kind of bond over the simplicity.
Making sure that everything in that area is actually waterproof. And by
hello.
waterproof, you have to fill the water up. They measure it, and they come back.
Okay. So another lesson is being present and being still. So this is a picture of me sitting up on a little ridge in Georgia. I was like 0.3 miles from my destination for the day. We were getting to a trail to get picked up and go to a hostel and resupply. But I was looking at this view and I was like, that's a nice view. I'm just gonna sit here. And I think on trail is like places where it really presents the opportunity to sit and just be present and be still in society and civilization. I think we have so many distractions and everything is so fast paced, which is great because like we can get so much done, we can accomplish so much, but I think it's also so useful to be able to just like pause and reflect, sit, just be still, not have constant distractions at all times. Like I became so disconnected from my phone. And I know like prior to trail, I could be doing something and then pick up my phone why am I picking up my phone? I don't need to be, there's nothing there that I need, but it's just like a habit of like instant gratification, instant satisfaction or something. So I think just being able to be present, be still, be silent with your thoughts is something that's very powerful. And I also, as I go through these, this is not like I'm a professional, all these things now. That's not true at all. I think this is always constantly like learning and growing. Trust myself more. So this is part of like the independent and like doing it solo. I wanted to grow in my confidence. I think of myself as a pretty independent person prior to trail. But being out there, I was by myself. I was doing it solo. Yes, I ended up hiking with some people here and there, but ultimately, like, if I wanted to keep hiking, I could keep hiking. If I wanted to stop, I could stop. I could trust in my system that I had. Even if there was like gear that did or didn't work, I could trust in myself to figure out if this didn't work, I'll figure out a way to make it work or make something else work, and I'll adjust from there. People would give me a hard time about my bear can and like the dehydrating the food and all that. And like, oh, that's such a process. Like you went through all that, but it worked for me. And I trusted that in myself and I was confident in that. So I think that was a big aspect of just growing in that confidence. And then also new appreciation for the US. Like I walked through so many little towns that I never would have passed through had I not done this. And there are a lot of tiny towns that are very cute, amazing people, so friendly. And it was also the landscapes. The landscape on the East Coast is so diverse. There is a lot of green tunnel, which is also a nickname for the trail, but there's also a wide variety of things to see and to experience if you just get out there and experience it. But the little towns is a big one of just this like camaraderie along the trail and all these lovely people in these small towns that are living very different lives than what we are living. So then it's kind of blocked here, but there's a quote on trail that's called "The trail provides." That's kind of saying that like things just work out. And I'd like to apply that to myself for life provides. And I don't mean that in the sense of like, oh, I can just lay back and just float by and like things will happen to me. It'll be fine. I mean it in the sense of if you're like working towards a goal and you're like taking steps and don't quite go your way because that happened on the trail constantly, it usually leads to something else that I was either meant to be at or like it works out better in the long run. There were multiple situations where it was like, oh shoot, these plans didn't work out. I didn't make it here. There actually wasn't water here. I had to push further, or the situation with my knee, like, dang, like I could not even make it to the town that I'm trying to get help. But wow, look at the best sunset I saw on all trail. So I'm trying to incorporate that to myself of like life provides. It's not just a trail thing. I think life works out. And then, I will say, I do think all these, I'm saying lessons from trail, but I think it's applicable to myself in life, but also at work. Trusting myself and being confident in the work that I'm doing and providing decisions that I'm making, being present. This is something that I think about with like meetings. Okay, I want to be in a meeting. I want to be present in this meeting. I don't want to be like doing other tasks, because then it's like, well, then do I really need to be in this meeting? Like I should have my full attention in what I'm doing. If I'm working on a task, like I should be fully focused on this task and trying to accomplish this. I think I can give my best self in that aspect. So that's something that I was hoping to apply. This is a question that I really like. Somebody asked, do you feel like your life had purpose? And I was like struggling with this at first because I never thought about this on trail of like, do I have purpose? Like, do I have meaning? And I think I never questioned it because it was inherently yes. Like looking back on it, like I think in society and civilization, we ask that a lot of like, oh, but what was my purpose? Like, what am I contributing? And I think out there, it was such a self-driven goal. Like there was no one telling me, go hike that trail, go finish that hike. Like this was purely a self-motivated goal. And like every single day I'm like checking off progress to that. I can see like personal growth, self-growth of when I'm overcoming different situations and like challenges. So to me, that was very fulfilling. Hello again. After 6 years of marriage, they have so to me, that was very fulfilling. And I feel like I had a purpose in that sense. So to me, I would say yes. I think this is a question I honestly still reflect on. I'm like, what does that even mean to like have purpose? But and then also encouraging myself and others. Somebody had also asked, did you ever see anyone have a breakdown? Absolutely, myself and other people. And what I love the most about seeing this not that I loved seeing her break down, but I saw this girl in Vermont. We were in town. I was eating at this little restaurant. She had walked up and I was like, hey, what's up? And her trail name was Beer Girl. Context. But so she walked up and I was like, Beer Girl, what's up? And she just was like blank face, looked like she was about to cry. And so I sat her down. I was like, what's going on? She had bought a train ticket home with the trail. She walked to the train station, standing at the door, and the conductor guy was like, you getting on? Like this like feels like out of a movie. It was like, you getting on? And she was like, no, I can't. She like backed up and she left. So she had purchased a ticket, decided in her mind, I'm gonna quit. But something was like, I can't quite yet. She come back, and so I was sitting there talking to her. She was getting scared about the White Mountains, which people will fearmonger and be like, oh, the whites, they're so bad, they're so hard, like people are getting injured. Yes, they're hard, people get injured. But also I know people who like got injured walking to go pee in the middle of the night in their camp. So my big thing was like, do not count yourself out, at least get to the whites, recognize that it's hard, and let it be hard what kicks you off, as opposed to giving up before you even try. So I had this whole conversation with her. She pushed through, she finished, and actually she was finishing she finished 2 weeks after me at Springer Mountain, and I didn't know she was going to be finishing this day, but I happened to be up there at Amicalola, and I see her walking by, and I screamed like, "You're a girl, this is crazy." So I got to see her at her absolute lowest when she was about to quit, and then when she was actually finishing the whole thing, which was an incredible experience. And then PDSA, so I didn't mention this earlier, but I was actually supposed to hike the trail back in 2021, and a week before starting had to cancel all my plans, ended up being diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. Went through a year of treatments, relapses, and struggles with that. Was finally able to hike the trail last year, which just made the trail that much more meaningful that I was even able to start it and then, of course, finish it. But I ended up setting up a fundraiser for ITP research, and as of now, it's raised over $5,500. So I would say that added a little bit of purpose to that too. Little things, strangeness in adjusting back to civilization. Water is so accessible, like all over the place, so easy. I don't have to sit and wait for like 5 minutes to filter my water. That's a beautiful thing. Not having my knife around my neck. I put my neck knife on every single day for 6 months. So I remember the first day I was going like out to the grocery store or something, I went to grab it and I was like, wait, people probably don't do this in civilization. So that was weird. Like I said, wearing different shoes for the first time was very strange. Not having to ration toilet paper. So you acquire toilet paper in towns and you use it while you're out on trail for the 5 days, 7 days, whatever, until you're in another town again. So sometimes you may start running a little low. Got to be wise in how much you use. So not having to do that was very nice. Typing on computer was weird. I was like, forgot what a keyboard was. That came back eventually, thankfully. And then so many dishes. I used a single pot and a single spork for the whole trail. So when I got home and I saw my parents, just my mom and my dad, had like a dishwasher full of plates, bowls, forks, and knives. I was like, what are you doing? Like, why not just wash the one? So that was a little change in perspective. Things that I miss about trail, kind of what I was talking about before, being so active. And to me, being active, I feel like changed. I've always thought of myself as a highly active person, but it kind of changed to, as opposed to just having like a 1 or 2 daily workout, to like, well, I want to move. Like if I sit for 8 hours, if I do a really good workout in the morning, then sit for 8 hours and a really good workout in the evening, I don't feel like I've done a lot anymore. I think because I had the context of like, I moved all day. I remember texting my friends, I was like, do you guys feel weird if you're not walking for at least half the day now? So that was kind of weird. And that's something that I'm trying to incorporate, of like, get up and go on a little walk, move my body. I feel like I work better and like think better in that aspect, but that is something that I miss from trail. The simplicity and the minimalism of it. I mean, I was living out of a backpack, which is here. This was my home. This was my life. Something about that is very simple. How little you need to be, 1, survive, but 2, to be happy. I was like my happiest self out there, and I had hardly anything. So I think that's a really cool aspect. And then the community, just how bonding it is. That's something I'll always miss, but will always be there. And then the sense of connectedness to myself, others, and nature. Obviously, like with the community, like we're all connected to each other, but then nature is like something with yourself and nature being that immersed and that dependent on your own abilities, and then like the nature that is around you, water, like this, the simplicity, everything kind of comes back down to being the connectedness in the nature. And I love that, and I miss that dearly. But I will say that I notice nature more every day now. I feel like when I'm walking around, I look at the sky more, I look at the trees more, I like hear the birds more. I just feel like I notice things more about it, and I'm kind of glad that I do. I feel like before trail, I'd probably like just ignore it, and then like it goes by. It's just like, oh, it's just there. But now it's like I look for it. I look for appreciating it too, which I like. So I think the contrast between trail life and civilization lets me appreciate both better. They both have their pros and cons, but one makes me want to go to the other one makes me go to the other. But on that, the next adventure. One day down the line, I will do the Pacific Crest Trail. So there's the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and the Continental Divide Trail. Those are the 3 long trails of the US that make up the Triple Crown. I will do all 3 of them. Not a goal, I will do them. At some point. This is like further down, who knows when. But the Pacific Crest Trail would be next. And then obviously like little backpacking trips here and there. I'm going to plan a trip to take some newbies on a trip at some point. So let me know if you want to go. But yeah, that's it. I know it's long. There's a lot. I don't know how to cram 6 months of life into just one little concise. I feel like I barely talked, but there's, that was a lot. So thank you for listening. I hope that was somewhat entertaining, informative, anything. If there are more questions, I'm happy to answer more questions too. But that was my life.